Welcome back to Let's Not Sugarcoat It. Season 3 is here and we're excited to dive into the core of communication, relationships, and leadership.
We're your hosts, Bella and Lee, a husband and wife duo with a successful business helping couples and organizations get it together to play a bigger game and elevate their relationships and performance.
We believe in keeping it real, so each week we'll bring you incredible guests, entrepreneurs sharing their authentic experiences, along with episodes featuring just the two of us tackling the tough topics.
So, if you're ready to enhance your connections and sharpen your leadership skills, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Okay. Welcome. We today want to bring back to the show for the third time Amy Cohen. Amy is an event maven, mentor, and personal brand expert. She is amazing wife, mother, and entrepreneur. She is quality retreats all over the world. She's done Okanagan retreats, Tuscany and France, States, New York, all those kind of things. And now she has opened up Okanagan corporate retreats. And so we wanted to welcome Amy, a good friend, amazing woman, a community builder, and a connector. Welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you. I mean, sometimes when you hear your own bio, it's like, as my kids would say, a bit cringe, and only because we don't give ourselves enough, praise in our accomplishments. So thank you. Yeah. And It's a pleasure to be here with both of you.
Yeah. So today we want to talk about, again, communication and relationships. So you have a business, you've had multiple business, you maneuvered through many things in your life. So just tell us a little bit about, your personal story, why events, why corporate, and then how you get community and how do you communicate with people to get you to come and trust and, show up for you just like you show up for them.
Oh, I love that. That's a loaded question. We're going to unpack. All right. Well, I will jump right into it. So I'll start with a little bit more about me and how it all began. So I'm from a small town, which I really want all the listeners to understand my story. It doesn't matter where you come from, and it doesn't matter where you were born. The goal and the mission in life should be to live your best life, to go after your big dreams and really follow your passions. And so that's exactly what I've done. I took myself to college, got a student loan, was not handed anything. I really found something I loved, which I changed early on. So a lot of people don't know this about me, but I started my education as a paramedic. And so I loved helping people. And the reason I got into that was because right after high school, I decided I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had to invest in myself. I had to take out a loan. So I really did sit with what I wanted to do because I was going to have to pay this back. I was going to have to, find something I loved. And I wasn't fully confident in what that was going to be in high school. And so I worked at a home for mentally challenged adults, and had to go and get had to take a course CPR, and then advanced CPR, and then EMR, emergency medical responder. So that course, I had to show up. I had to go to Winnipeg. Remember, I'm from a small town, so I had to drive in a little over an hour, and invest in myself. And I loved this. So fast forward a year, I went to Calgary for a paramedics program. Loved it. I talk a lot about showing up, which is something that I'm super, that's been the baseline of my entire career and all my accomplishments is I show up. I say yes to opportunities. So I saw a poster on the wall getting ready to go to college, and it was for soccer tryouts. And I tried out. I was not good. Let me tell you, I played in high school. That's it. I was not a superstar. But I showed up, and I was very, very dedicated, and I was willing to give it my all. And the coach clearly could see that. So I wasn't a starter to start. I played wing, left and right wing. And I loved it. I loved it in high school. I loved it in college. I made the team. So for any of you listening, in Canada, college, you don't get recruited per se at a lot of the smaller like colleges, maybe some of the bigger universities you do. But I got my tuition fully paid for. So this was like,
Awesome.
that, piece of show up because you never know what's on the other side, right? They say you're one door from being open to your next big opportunity. And that's what that was. And so that gave me such, like, I was in a space of people that were so like-minded because they were going after their big dreams. And most of the girls I played soccer with were in school for business. It was a college in Calgary that was really known for their business program. And I ended up switching. So my journey ended up, unbeknownst to my family, my parents were like, "Are you sure?" I had to keep my license, do my practicum still, which gave me some, I think, it has you again showing up, but I was kind of almost living these two lives, so to speak, because I was on this journey of something now I really, really loved, which was entrepreneurship and business, and knowing I would want to have a business in the future, but also like I've invested in, this paramedic program as well. And for anybody listening, you have to have a class 4 license to drive an ambulance. And that's a whole nother story. I knew I would never own an ambulance company, and I didn't want to be told how many days off or on I needed to work. So quickly, that was something I shifted. But I have such fond memories of that time in my life because I, again, showed up for education, showed up for something I loved, and found, a true passion of mine, and got into beauty because I always loved makeup. And so all of my projects, all of my, essays, anything I had to do now in my second year of school, because I did go year 1 for paramedics, which is called an EMT2 program. Paramedics is a 4-year program. And anything I did in business, I did around beauty. So I was very inspired, incredibly eager, and very curious. So that has propelled and taken, that was essentially where I would say was the starting point of my real entrepreneurship journey, as most people know it today. I opened makeup schools several years later. I was a makeup artist for years in Calgary, doing a lot of top TV segments, the fashion, the trends, working with models and doing editorial and campaigns, bridal. And then I moved to LA and New York, and that's where my kind of big career took off. So that's my journey.
Hey, Amy, you mentioned showing up a couple times, more than a couple times. And can you walk us through, what that means for you? Like some people probably have a good sense of maybe what showing up is. Some people might just be like, what do you mean? Like just physically showing up? And so, maybe walk us through what that means for you. And then also, how has showing up for you evolved? From the time where you were going down a path of being a paramedic, how showing up meant for you playing soccer, to now how it shows up for you, the term showing up as a successful entrepreneur now with all the big things you got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right in the term, it really is a mindset, and it's very much a way of being. So it is not just putting your foot through a door. It's not just opening the door. It's not just sitting in the seat or being at the table. It is way more than that. It is about mentally wanting to crack open. It is about choosing to be uncomfortable, right? It is really about saying yes to opportunities that potentially aren't your greatest wins, but build that resilience. So it is so all-encompassing, personally and professionally. My greatest memories and opportunities have come from showing up, from saying yes, from the people I've met to the opportunities that I get to bank and say, I've got experience in this. And this has then propelled me to that next chapter.
Yeah. And it's like, it's one thing to show up in business and for community, but there's also a family involved, right? So showing up for your children, showing up for your husband looks a little different as an entrepreneur because we don't have a 9 to 5, it's many hours. So how would you say, you grew from, running the business as a solopreneur, then meeting your husband, going into business, having the children, it all changes, right? Like we shift, we mold, we maneuver. And now it's not only showing up for ourselves and our community and our business and, the people that work for us, but now we have other little human beings, which we need to show up in a certain way as well. So what has changed? How did you guys work that out? Because it's hard. As coupleneurs, it's hard sometimes finding that balance of, where do I put my energy? Because we cannot be 100% everywhere at all times.
Yes. So that is something that has been a huge part of my journey. Of course, starting out the career without children, when unmarried, really ambitious, moving to another country, starting my career there. I had everything to lose and so much to gain. So I knew I could always, come home. The door's always open. And so a huge part of my mindset and my just being comes from that security that my parents were like, push, go, we'll always be here. And so I really instill that in not only with my boys and with my family. I have two boys and my husband, who is also an entrepreneur. A huge part is I have always been who I am. So even though I've evolved, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, is I've always really made a point to follow my passions, to believe in myself, right? And do the things that actually feel good and right for me versus going down a path because the money may have been good, going down a path because, the influence was there, being distracted with, the presence of, being in a big city and the noise. It was really about like what I was willing to sacrifice, because entrepreneurship is a sacrifice in the most beautiful way in most cases, but can be challenging when you have kids. So I've always been very honest about my career. My kids know it. I've brought them to my businesses. When I started in New York City, I had Luca, our oldest, and we would come. I'd take the stroller on the weekends, clean the studio. I've always been somebody that has taken such pride in my work. And so I would, get everything ready for, the week ahead, and he'd be there. And same when I expanded to Los Angeles and had Rocco, our youngest. So they've been around it. I openly speak about what I do. I encourage them to follow their dreams and passions and have conversations about what that might look like for them, which I hope they don't even know yet, because maybe it doesn't even exist. And they will just, I think choosing to be open with your family and be, have these conversations in entrepreneurship, but also in your career, right? Why is mom gone all the time? Or why is this a busy season? Or why is, are we not traveling as much for, around the holidays? Maybe I'm expanding. Maybe there's a season of change in some ways. And so it's just open conversation. And I think that's the most important, because that's how we all evolve.
Yeah, I think like definitely where you're talking about, being open and honest, and really it comes down to communication, and having your partner involved, coming together and saying, okay, this season of my life and my business, I need to put in 80% there and 20% here. Are you able to meet the other, whatever percent with the family and the boys, and then include them in, our vision and our mission? That was a big thing for Lee and I is, you run parallel lives sometimes and you don't cross-pollinate. You don't keep each other in the loop. And then it's like, okay, well, we come home and then, you tell me a little bit about your day and so on and so forth. But where are we going? Why are we doing this? If you don't have a vision for why we're doing this, you're just kind of putzing along.
Yeah. You get lost in the mix. That's, as you're talking, it makes me think about that there's really more than just one showing up, right? So there's a showing up for yourself, and then there's a showing up for others. And so, whether it's with your kids, with, your spouse, in business, right? Your people that work for you, or your clients. Question here is, has there been a time maybe that you talk about where there was this, an intersection of going to show up for you and trying to show up for someone else, and how there wasn't alignment there? And how did you work through that? Because I think that happens a lot of times in life, right? And we get lost in, I think, showing up for a lot of other people all the time, because sometimes showing up for ourselves, following our own dreams, especially if it's down kind of a non-normal or non-traditional path, people are like, oh, well, you sure you want it? You start kind of questioning yourself, and then you kind of feel pressured to kind of like fall into other people's ideas of what's the right thing to do for you. And then, so in some ways you're showing up for them because you want to please them, you want to be liked, you want to look good to them, but then you're not showing up for yourself. And the show up for yourself can, then you're kind of faced with, a whole lot of people are thinking I'm not going to make it, right? And so you just got to keep, showing up for yourself.
Oh, yeah. That is, well, just a point, and then I'll come back to the question. But the point that you just made, Lee, is, and then you're showing up for others. And, there's a sense of either letting yourself down, which I think is the biggest disappointment, right? Or getting through life and looking back and saying, I didn't. That to me is like my biggest fear. It's like, no, I am going to do. But that does take effort. That does take communication. And you've got to quiet the noise, because people are always going to have an opinion. But if I cared about what other people thought about me, I would not be where I am today, right? I would not be willing. I would not have opened a school in New York City, point blank, right? If you just think about that on the fundamental side of it, New York City, one of the most vivacious, thriving cities in the world, to open up a makeup school and not only open it up, but have a line out the door and move into a space less than a year later into Manhattan, get fully licensed. I was the first school to be licensed for so I got licensed for makeup artistry, but also for hairstyling as a non-cosmetology school. That was, it just wasn't being done. But I imagined our students being able to have more education, but not have to go down, another year-long program. So it was about being willing to try, right? Be willing to show up to say, hey, what could this look like? And be willing to get the no's, which, to be honest and fair, I got a lot of no's, and pushed back and was able to crack through. And so that, I think, naturally happens in life. If we just, bump up against the norm and the, mediocrity, I don't think that life is as joyful and as full as we can truly have it for ourselves, really. So, and then,
100%. Go ahead.
No, well, to the other point that, or the question is, being married, being in a relationship, having a partnership, having a business partner, right? There are expectations. It's not always 50-50, no matter how you slice it. Sometimes it is more 80-20, as you mentioned, Bella. So that part from my life, has not always been, it's not always easy. The thing is I mentioned this earlier, I have always followed my passion, something that truly lit me up, that I felt really good about. And it's not always been easy. I've had to be in the messy middle. I've had to do, work with the accountants, try and, expand a business that you're like, where's the cash flow, right? Like sales, where are they? All of those, iterations of business ups and downs, people leaving, hiring, challenges, and so the thing is communication is so important. I love that you really focus on that on your podcast. And for me, it's about having open conversations with my husband. And sometimes they're very difficult because I see it away and he thinks, don't do, like, why are you focusing on this? You're getting distracted, X, Y, or Z, come back to, this goal. And that's happened multiple times. And sometimes I'm not always, so happy hearing it, but I know he's right a lot of the time. And
Yeah.
so I sit with it. But actually it goes both ways, because there's things that I've been shocked that I've shared that I've, kind of, I'm not that type of person. Like, I just like to kind of, let things be. I'll take, the high road and kind of just to have it be smoother. But I also don't want my children to see that either. So I've had to learn to say, hey, I am, I don't get walked all over, but I certainly will be like, okay, like, there's room for the other person to have more of the seat at the table. And it's like, wait a minute, we are of equal. So let's actually come to that place, because that's also what I want to show young people and people I'm mentoring, and of course my children.
Yeah. And I think in like relationships, like especially husband and wife, we need to learn. We're not taught how to communicate with each other. We're not taught how to show up for each other. So it is like a bump and grind until you figure out your methods. But I love that you said that you even though it may have not sat well, you still communicated it. Because I know for a long time, I just let things like you said, go. And then resentment built, right? Because then I feel like my voice isn't heard. And as a partnership in relationship and in business, you need to know that you're able to have your voice heard with anything, the good, the bad, the ugly, like all of it in a safe environment, because you're a team. You're winning, he's winning, and vice versa. So I love that you said, even when it was hard even to hear some of the feedback, you sat with it and said, okay, this actually makes sense. But that, again, it's that alignment, your vision, your goals, having that target of where you guys want to be is so key. Because then it's easier to say yes or no to the other things, right?
Absolutely. And what's really, I kind of have a little bit of a laugh in hearing it back, because it is so true. And that could mean so many different things for different people. I know personally for me, it is, and in our family, a lot of times I'll have a big wild dream and then it'll cost a lot. So, the conversation might be like, oh, okay, like, how does this look? But there was recently a very big goal that I had. All of my business, for anybody listening, thus far has been bootstrapped. So I've not ever had an investor previously. I've not had a business partner. I'm very grateful to have a husband who, is a business manager in many ways. And so, and then of course, hiring out the people that lawyers, if needed, accountants, those sort of things. So, but this quite wild dream, and I'm a big dreamer, was one that was sitting with me and was not going away. And when you have this feeling that is just, it's there and you're super excited about it and you can't stop thinking about it. I had that, and I had that for the Chic experience. So that was, a five or so years ago. And I was still really heavily in the mix of my beauty schools, and did not see a way that I could have both, even though it was the only way that I was going to see my future. And I didn't know exactly what it would look like, but I wasn't going to stop thinking about it. And I took some time. And, when you step back from a business that is your essentially generating sales, you're wanting to, whether you're scaling or you're wanting to increase profits, or at least retain what you have, because you have a team and rent and all the overhead to cover. I made a big, bold move. And, some would argue that it, could potentially have failed. And, in some ways, maybe it did, because actually sales did decrease. So sometimes you have to, I think, look at what that future could look like. I know for me, what I wanted was so much brighter on the other side. So I was willing to let some things go. And in most cases, and a lot of times, people, that's why I say, like, some people might not agree with this, because there is, entrepreneurs or business owners that would say, well, just hire a whole team and let them handle it, and then you can. well, that costs money. That still is in my, everyday, agenda, or, conversations popping up that, distractions. And it wasn't the way for me. And I needed to clear some of the table. And that did mean, a reset. And
And sometimes I feel like, we hold on to something because it's generating, a certain level of comfort, money, but it's not, satisfying that void, that, feeling of that there's something more, but we still hold on to it because we fear of losing what we've already built, because we sometimes don't believe in ourselves that we are worthy of more, of expansion. Like, we sometimes don't believe in ourselves to grow and scale and take that chance that there is, like you said, something better on the other side. So
Yeah. I always say that the mind is for creating, not containing. And so when we talk about communication, even when we are trying to contain the potential bad outcomes. So we're using this example, we're going to do this business shift, but it might result in, reduced revenue. And so you kind of harbor that and hold on to it. And rarely does that narrative get better when you're just holding on to it yourself. And so the important part, going back to kind of the earlier conversation around, vision, mission, and how you kind of communicate with your family, right? Show up for them and for yourself. It's not just to say, hey, I've got this big, bold vision, and just talk about the shiny stuff. But it's also like, here's the risk, and then really break it down, saying, so if this happens, how do we show up for each other, right? It's easy to figure out and know how we're going to show up for each other when things are going great. But when things start to fall apart, it's like, how do we have these conversations and create this own safe container, because we're on the same team? It's win-win, right? Bad things might happen, and it's easy for us, if we don't set that intention, to fall into like a blame game, right? Oh, well, you shouldn't have, changed business because now we're in this position. So no, we don't want to get into that because that's not helpful, right? So I don't know, did you guys have any of that type of conversation when you were making this shift, or think about that at all?
Oh yes, I was thinking of a couple of times, and not just once, actually. So going back to the time we lived in Los Angeles. So we had, I had spent 15 and a half years in the States, and now live in Canada. And so the conversation when my husband was wanting to move to Canada, and he's not Canadian, I'm the Canadian, he's from the UK, so he's from London, and we have our boys, and we wanted to have roots and have them in an education system and really thrive in an area that we could come and go for our careers, but we also knew that they were, in a beautiful, safe place. And Canada is incredible in so many ways. And so that conversation did not go well. We were not on the same page. I was not ready to hear that. I could not envision how running a U.S. business in Canada there's a border, and it might not seem like it's that big of a deal, but it actually is. It is two different countries. And so that felt very overwhelming. I felt like this enormous amount of pressure and stress, and it actually weighed on me to a point that I wasn't expecting. And then COVID happened. We did move, and COVID happened. So I was in this like big, like in the trenches, let's just say. And what was interesting is we talk about showing up. For me, I can find joy in so much because I choose that, right? And wherever I am, right? And so it's not for me so much about the things, it's about what I'm doing, right? My community, my family, my career. I take pride in my career. And so that was a hard conversation. And that was one that did not end in one night. It was about a year So that was a long time to be in, and it wasn't every day, and there wasn't, it was a space that I wasn't super comfortable in because I didn't like what I thought the outcome could be. And I sat with it. So that was one of the first times in like a, really kind of big career move, also family, kids, more than just me. And I ended up really kind of just pausing and having these conversations back with my husband to ask him more about why he was feeling this, what he saw, what life looked like for him. And as I heard it through his lens, it started making a lot more sense to me. So I really encourage people to when you're hearing something, it's not just a one-way road. Have the conversation back. Take time to just sit with it. And not have any conversation for a while. Maybe even talk to somebody that is a confidant or somebody close and just kind of say it out loud and get it off your chest. For me, it was just like I sat with it and circled back on it. And that kind of became the motion for, actually, this does seem really exciting. I am good with this. So that was a long process, or what felt like a very long process, to be one of the greatest choices and decisions that we have made. Because it actually, I wholeheartedly believe I would not have expanded to a completely, new adventure when I did. I may have hung around longer in a business that I'm very proud of, but also it's not all of me. It's not the only thing that, was meant to be part of my journey. So, I jumped off the cliff and flew.
Yeah.
And it felt
I
really
love
good,
that though. You get like some really good communication examples there. One of the first ones is having that awareness that on default, right, we listen through filters that usually we're not taught to notice. And so when somebody starts talking to you, comes up with an idea or whatever, and it doesn't align with what your vision, what your future, right, that predictable, certain future you're trying to build, then all of a sudden the listening is either you're listening through like an agree or don't agree, right? So you're immediately like, oh yeah, okay, I agree. Oh no, don't agree, or it's a right and wrong. Oh no, you're not. I don't like this. Like
I'm
dislike, that's
uncomfortable.
another
Yeah.
one. Yeah. And then once we're listening through that lens, that's all we can hear. That's all we see. All the gold of what's being talked about gets filtered out. And all that gets through is all the parts that we don't like. And once you become aware that that's happening, then you can shift. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's got to be this polarized, okay, well, if I'm not listening through wrong, then I got to compromise and agree or say they're right. It's like, no, now you get into a state of inquiry. Now you get curious, right? And then I think Stephen Covey says, right, seek to understand first, then be understood, right? And that has to come from a place of curiosity, great questions, to what you just said, draw out what lens are they looking through. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. It's just let's first find out. And then once you have all the information, then you can make a decision at that point, right? So that's awesome.
Yeah, and that it's so interesting because when you are in a partnership of any kind, back to being married or a business partner, decisions a healthy business or a thriving business should have challenges, should have times that you sit at the table and that you're really like questioning because you are wanting to have the best result. And I know recently I was looking at capacity, and I was also challenging my identity because I was feeling like I was in an identity crisis. And my husband saw this successful business that I'm running, and I'm not feeling like I want to give 100% to it. I don't want to give 50%, but I want to hold capacity for less. So still give 100%, but have capacity for way less, and fill kind of my bucket career-wise with something that I was expanding on, which is the Chic experience. And then now the Okanagan corporate retreats. And that took some time as well. And that took me explaining how this path could look, because that challenging time or communication piece it was almost like looking at an outcome that was going to be less financially successful, to have this big gap in what was an unknown. And I spent the time to outline strategy, come up with numbers very conservatively, so it made sense. Yeah. So it was not ambitious. And that's what that took. So that was less about the conversation and more about taking the action to actually show what this could look like, to give, for me, it was my husband, give him the confidence to be like, okay, yeah, I believe in you. I know you're going to show up. I know you're going to do it, but does it actually financially put money in the bank account?
Sense, yeah.
So at the end of the day, yes, I love what I do and I'm very passionate, and I actually truly do lead first with loving what I do. And the money has followed. So I think if it's not that way for you, just, I think outline it, look at it with a more of a lens as to maybe why not, or what, corrections could be made. But everybody's journey is different. And so for mine, it took some real numbers and some strategy and some systems in place to make it real, really understood.
Yeah. And I think it's all like, all comes down to, the strength in your communication skills. There's a way of approaching your partner, whether it's in business or in life, and how you present your ideas and how you present your side really matters in moving things forward versus, coming and saying, this is what I want. This is what I like. If you don't do this, if, I don't get to do this, we're done or moving forward and so on. So, I mean, I had one of those moments when we were moving to Kelowna. I couldn't find myself in Edmonton. And I got to that point where I didn't feel like I could tell my husband that I was suffering, because I didn't think he would be able to, take us or get on board on moving out, which I wanted for so long. So I came in hot and heavy. I was like, I want to move. I'm going to Kelowna. If you don't want to come, you can stay here. I'm like all these things. And then he's like, whoa. Listen, Linda, honey, I'm on board. But I didn't hear that, right? Because I was already in that breakdown. And it's like, he's not going to do this. He's not like, he's going to hold me back. Like, because we did not have those type of communications, because I was holding it back. So it is so key to have those open and honest conversations in a loving, compassionate way.
Well,
and doing them often, right?
Yeah. Not waiting for it to fester and, make it bigger in your head than what it actually is. Because if I just said, hey, babe, like I really am suffering and I can't do this anymore, he would have been like, yeah, I hear you. I'm with you. But I came in like a freaking thunderbolt.
Yeah, tornado.
And I didn't even hear the yes,
Yeah. There's, Amy, you mentioned earlier about, when you think about a thriving business and what occurs inside of a thriving business, it's not just constant celebrations and everything, going as planned, right? A plan is at best a best guess. And so things naturally are going to come up that are unforeseeable and everything, but there's going to be difficult conversations and, pivot points and stuff that's really going to challenge you. And a thriving family, a thriving marriage is the same, right? And it's just like in business. If you avoid those tough conversations that need to happen now, they're just going to show up later. But the conversation is going to be that much bigger, that much harder. And so it's like these little uncomfortable, don't always have to be uncomfortable, but even if you feel like it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, it's better to have that sooner because it's like an investment into preventing the bigger, more uncomfortable conversation from happening, down the road. And that's something that we're constantly continuing, to learn about, even in our marriage. Is just, hey, okay, let's work on having this now. And I'll just say, like, I think it's really important to take some principles, like having a meeting. So, Bella's talking about moving out to Kelowna. I think about all the times where, myself included, where it's like, oh, I want to do this. And you express it kind of like just in passing, right? Like maybe someone's in the kitchen but you don't actually, like, if this is really important to me to move or to start this business or whatever, hey, I want to schedule a time with you, right? Let's sit down for an hour. When works for you to sit down at the table so we can actually talk this through. Not just, I want to do this. And then the other person goes, well, yeah, of course. I love you, so I love the things that you want. So yeah, totally. But you don't spend the time then getting into, like, the detail of, like, you would like a business plan, a strategy. I'm like, so what does this mean? What's it going to cost? How long is it going to take? Where's it going to take us? How are we going to accomplish this? You don't get into that stuff in a 30-second passing comment. Yes.
Yeah. We should treat it like a business plan. I love that you said that. Treat it like you're going to the bank to get a loan, and you probably don't even need to in most business situations. But if that was the strategy, as most people know, what would you do? You would do your due diligence. You would do your research. You would come up with a business plan. You would do the financials. You would do the projections. You would put that package together. Do the same thing with your big goals, with your family. A big goal is a family move. That's a big goal. Yeah. That's an awesome goal. And a big goal is starting a small business. That's a big goal, and that's amazing as well. So whatever it is, it's not about, the big goal needs to be something that, is of millions or is, to the biggest city in the world. A big goal can be something that actually just moves the needle a little bit in your, in your whole life, that can change so much. So I very much encourage, listeners and people to sit with it, take stock of what that goal that you want, what outcome do you want? What is the plan? Like, what is the goal? And then figure out a plan and invest in it and present it. Yeah. Right. We try and teach our kids that. For anybody, who has children listening, in our family, it's really important that they explain when they want something. We personally in our house don't do allowance, but we do because they're going to have everything they need. So, but what we do is they can work towards a goal of something that they really want, because that work has them investing into something that is meaningful, something that really, rather than it being, these small things that are just, they just want it because it's right in front of them. And so for them, the money that comes from birthdays, the money that comes from celebrations, from, their bar mitzvah, from different things, go into their bank account. And like every 6 months, twice a year, I get their statement, or they come with me and they get to see how much is in there, and any money that Granny sends or any, birthday money we put in there. And then that's theirs, to kind of take stock of as well. And if they want to spend it, they need to come up with, what's the plan? What does this mean to you? Why do you want? So it becomes the earlier conversations as well, not just the ones that we as adults have to have, that might seem, bigger and more, I think just challenging. It just becomes part of how we communicate.
And I think it's like normalizing talks about money, religion, politics, because in society right now, those are the things we're told not to talk about. But how are we supposed to learn about our needs and others' needs if we're not talking about those very conversations that like forge our future? You know what I mean? Like, this will be a part. Finance is going to be part, because they don't teach mortgages. They don't teach investment in school. Politics, we need to know our parties, and religion. There's so much out there that we're not talking about because there's like this fear of conflict. But like you said, babe, it's like, okay, Lee, sorry.
I'm not safe.
It's yeah, right. It's listening to understand,
Mhm.
not to, make someone
Mhm.
wrong or to turn them to be, aligned with you. It's really listening to understand first
Mm.
and then having that conversation.
And I think choosing to educate yourself and having those in your life, like I love sharing knowledge. I did not grow up in a home that had books like this. I did not grow up in a home that was actively asking how school was and what I was, learning. I grew up in a small town, but that is not why the education was the way it was for me. How it was I had teachers that were not excited. They taught like they didn't want to be there, which is
Yeah.
such a bummer because you've got these young children, and I've seen the total opposite with the boys. They've had teachers that are so excited. So it's not, something that, has stuck with me where I'm like, oh, education isn't great. It actually made me realize how important it is to have great educators. And for us as communitarians to invest in the joy of, they're going to go and get educated, but encouraging them and having these amazing teachers teaching our children. We homeschooled our kids for a year and they had a great experience. We've done a couple different iterations. And I thought it's also looking at what works best for the individual, whether it's children, employees, relationships, what works best for that human, because we're all made very differently in our
For them to
emotions, in
thrive.
our right, and what brings us joy and what has us feeling like we're thriving. I mean, we all have fundamental needs, but outside of that, I think it's really important to look at the whole spectrum of a person and lean into that.
Do you have any I guess, tools or modalities, Amy, that you use to in any of those examples of people to help you find out what is it that they need? How is it that they need you to show up for them? Because I think
Well,
that you're right. People all have their needs, right, and everything, but I think it's easy for us to fall into this trap where we just constantly project what's worked for us, what we believe, all those things, because it gives us it helps us kind of like concrete reinstate our own sense of identity, right? Like this is how I live my life. And it's easy with kids or others or even in business. This is how I've run my business. Now you're working for me. And so I want you to do this the way I've done that. I want my kids to go to school the way I've gone to school, right? Because I don't know, makes you feel like you've done things the right way, but maybe that's not what they need. And it robs them from their own sense of independence as well. So I'm just curious. Back to the question is just what are some tools you use to try and figure that out?
Yeah. So tools I specifically use. One is more of an action-based tool. So it's just listening. It's super simple. It's actually listening wholeheartedly and letting the person feel seen, truly know that when they're with me, I'm hearing them. And that simplicity has changed so much, truly. The other thing is also in everyone's uniqueness, right? In learning, in being around people, whether you're introverted or extroverted, whether you're someone who thrives in, social environments or big cities, or in our own uniqueness, I think it's really important to ask questions as well, right? So when I'm hiring or I'm working with people, like, what do you love to do? Tell me more so that, I am meeting you where you're at and I can help encourage you to thrive. I don't need to hold your hand. I shouldn't have to, right? We don't want to necessarily have everyone on our team playing the same position, right? We want it to be a team that, can win the championship and we can kind of go the extra mile, but we also can go through losses and have open conversations. So I think it's important to ask questions. And then for me, just right down to my core is something that changed for me and my life, because I have been in the entrepreneurship world for over 20 years. So there has been, this hustle culture. There's been this, you're on the hamster wheel. It's not the 9 to 5. You're like, fully committed 24/7. And it's like no one can sustain that. So, you mentioned it earlier, Bella, how, sometimes you're giving, 80% of what you have in this space, in the 20, but that does not mean that you're not giving your all. It can mean that you're holding, incredible space at your capacity that you have right now, but maybe there's only 3 things on the list that you're really dedicated to. And some of the other ones, are sitting on the sidelines. And I have made a commitment to myself that I am going to give myself the grace, me personally, to be in those seasons. And sometimes they're short and they're sweet, and I learn so much from them, and sometimes they're longer than expected. But when we give ourselves the grace, what ends up happening at the finish line, and then we, move the marker to another finish line and keep going, has us moving through it or to the greater success that we were, looking for.
Yeah.
And I love that. Go ahead, babe. Oh, go.
I say, I love that too, just how first you described listening as an action. I love that because I feel like, well, we take granted that we can communicate, right? But even still, as a child, you need to learn how to communicate. But to listen, you don't. We just automatically listen. We don't need to be taught to hear things, right? But the fact that it's being framed as an action means that it's actually a skill. And when you actually are listening, like I know for us 3, and then anybody else that's listening or watching who has done workshops, facilitated, and you're on and you're listening, it takes a lot of energy to really dial in, because it's not just about listening to sometimes what is verbally being said, but it's also listening to what's not being said, right? And trying to figure that out. So I love that. And then also bringing it back to curiosity. I think that is such a superpower for capacity, is really being able to be curious about, everything, what's going on, what's happening. And we go back to, Bella, you were saying about developing our communication skills. And one part of developing skills is learning, right? From, taking classes or a workshop, getting a coach, whatever it is. But then the next part of that is applying. And anytime that we're applying something that we're learning new or trying to scale our skill set or capacity, we're going to get messy with it. And so we need to lean into those uncomfortable bits of conversation and give ourselves grace and space to be able to mess it up sometimes. And then sit back and take that time out and be curious about, okay, how could I have done that better? Right? Because again, I think all too often when communication breaks down, we're real quick to look outward and blame people, right? Criticize others, blame situations, to give us that sense of like, well, I'm not the one that caused this communication to go sideways. And you know what? Maybe in some cases there's some truth to that, but there's no growth there. So you gotta be curious about, okay, even though I can say that, my boss or, someone else in my life really didn't do a good job communicating, how could I have done better? How could I have maybe created a safer space for them where maybe they wouldn't have feel threatened? Those types of things. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
And allow yourself, when you're working, it's not going to be perfect. So allow for messiness in that and give each other that grace to make those mistakes and then own up to those mistakes and then have a conversation about that and not get hung up on the messiness, but get hung up on the growth and development that's happening in your communication and listening skills.
Yeah, I
100%.
think life is, this open book for every one of us. And, there's so many times in life, we start off with chapter 1 and move into chapter 2, that there is growth, seasons. There is seasons of sadness or challenge or letting go. I think the most important thing for any person is to soften the ego and really, really prioritize yourself and and be around others that lift you up. Because if we all have an ego, right, which is usually what allows us or what propels us to, whether we're having conversations, to shut the conversation down if we don't like it, or to decide, whether you're having a conversation with your child and they're telling you something and, it's like, but it's my way and I'm the adult. Well, they're going to learn to not share as much or to shut down before they've even, or to be asked and just have their, a similar response. And when we soften our ego to understand that, hey, you know what? We should be open. We should be open-hearted. We should be more compassionate, right? These chapters of, the book that we're all writing becomes more of a, I think, just life lessons and things that we get to find more joy and happiness in through the challenges, through the hardships, as opposed to, I think, the alternative.
Yeah. Well, okay. This was so amazing. Thank you so much, Amy, for joining us for the third time.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to hear about all the things that you have going on and how you're showing up for yourself and the community. So where can people find you?
So people can find me on my website, www.amynicolecohen.com. Everything lives there. So the Chic Experience, Okanagan Corporate Retreats, my mentorships, mastermind, everything is there. Who I am, if you want to know more, want to connect, it's all there.
Yeah, and we'll link all that stuff in the episode. So yeah, until next time, thank you so much. And till next time.
Thank you. Love and appreciate
Bye.
you. Thanks for having me.